Arutperumjothi Taniperum Karunai Arutperumjothi எல்லா உயிர்களும் இன்புற்று வாழ்க வள்ளல் மலரடி வாழ்க வாழ்க. So clay pots. So clay pot is something which we had used in the past, and we start using it for only water at some point of time. And nowadays, I don't think it's not even used for water anymore. But some people do use it even for cooking too. But there are lots of advantage in using clay pot. First one is it is alkaline in nature because of the clay. So we looked into the pH levels in blood in the last session. So it ranges from 0 to 14, 7 being neutral, and we know that the blood is a little bit above the neutral level of it. So 7 point something. So going towards the alkaline, and alkaline food is good for us too. So this is one major advantage of using a clay pot. It has its nutrients from the soil as well. So calcium, phosphorus, iron, magnesium are part of the clay pot. So we can use it with the natural ingredients getting into our body. Then one other main thing is we don't have to use lots of oil. So the oil needed is pretty less in here. And then the porous nature of it lets us cook evenly. It takes a while to get the heat in the clay pot, but once it gets its temperature on, it lasts for a while. So it retains also all the nutrients too, and it brings a good flavor to the food as well. Lots of people who use it will have noticed it. The food in some recipes, especially when doing in clay pots, add a good flavor to it. We can see that the flavors are completely there. It won't lose any of those nutrients either. So clay pot is definitely the one to go. But note that we want to stick with something where it's not glazed or not coated with all the materials what we have now. And then we have to look into what kind of coating is done, and that would always introduce more problems. So anything with no coating is definitely advisable. Okay, so now let's look into how we have to treat dry ginger. Dry ginger or sukku is something which has been said by our ancestors and siddhas for years and years about its uses. But sukku also has its own visham, or its anti-nutrient, what we are calling here. And there is a method to how we can eliminate the anti-nutrient from the dry ginger as well. It's okay. So first, what we have to do is we have to apply chunambu or chunna, or that's the calcium hydroxide, what we use for betel leaves. So we try to buy calcium hydroxide, which is a non-flavored one. I know there are lots of flavors coming these days, which like a pink colored one, and all these one which gives us good flavor too, and then it smells great, all those things. So better to use something which is not added with any of the flavors and the coloring agents. So we take some chunna or calcium hydroxide, apply it on the dry ginger, keep it aside and let it dry for some time. So once it has dried completely, what we have to do is we have to show the dry ginger in the flame. So what happens here is it tends to burn a lot. Even though we try to show it on top of the flame, it tries to catch fire a lot. So we may want to actually stop that burning anytime it happens. So that process needs to be done, and eventually all the chunna will turn into like a black coating, like we see in the snapshot in there. So once we have showed it in the flame and it turns black like this without burning, we have to remove all the outer layer. So we take a knife and basically shave off all the chunna what we have applied on it. So it will be one layer. We are trying to remove it, and during this process, we'll be also shaving the outer skin if it's present too. It will be completely gone. And while doing it itself, you can see the aroma of the dry ginger coming out, and it will be noticeable. It will be very noticeable, and you might have not smelled it before. It will be so aromatic at this point of time after the shaving is done. So once we got rid of all the outer layer, then we can powder it and can use that pinch in boiling water, or in any food where we want to use the dry ginger sukku for. So this is going to be the treating process of converting a dry ginger powder. Okay. So now let's look at what's called as Mukut Churanam, or herbal punch recipe. I just put that name in there. It uses three herbs. The first one is Karisalai. Karisalai is very good for longevity of the body, very good during the spiritual process, helps during the spiritual process. Thiruvanamalai is very good for concentration, and it actually removes phlegm from the lungs. Very good for respiration. Musumusukai too is very good for the lungs, the airflow, and also for a cough, for any kind of cough. Musumusukai is great. We went through all these three herbs in detail in the earlier sessions. But in short, these three herbs are recommended by Perumal a lot. And these herbs produce lots of heat in the body. To compensate that heat is what we are using cumin for. So for 1 cup of Karisalai herb, we use 1/4 of Thiruvanamalai powder, and what we are using is in the form of powder here. So for 1 cup of Karisalai powder, we use 1/4 of Thiruvanamalai, 1/4 of Musumusukai, and then 1/4 of cumin. So we mix all this together, and this can be used as our tea powder, as a tea substitute too, if you want to eliminate tea, or if you want to eliminate coffee too. You can slowly start introducing it, and then like in alternate days, and then slowly get converted that way. Or you can use as a supplement, however you see the fit for it. It's also called as a Kayakalpa Mooligai, which actually provides strength to our body. The way we do this recipe is we boil water, and if you do not want to add milk, that is okay too. But if you want to add milk, you can add milk as well. So you boil the water and milk, what is needed for you. And then after boiling, add the herbal mix in. Simmer it. The reason why we are doing after boiling is sometimes we put all this powder in there, and during the time of boiling, it actually puts all the powder outside of the container. So let it boil a little bit, and then simmer. Add the herb, and when it reaches the boiling point, add the herbal mix in, and continue until it reaches half the quantity. So if you want 1 cup, you have like 2 cups in total. So you put like 1 cup of water and 1 cup of milk, because eventually you are going to reduce it to 50%, and it will be only 1 cup. So simmer it until you get 50% of it. Then allow it to settle for 5 to 10 minutes. This is going to take some time. It's not going to be a pretty fast process. So allow it to settle until all the herbs are getting absorbed by the liquid. So once it got settled, drain if it is needed. If you don't like it, drain it. Feel free to. And then mix jaggery. We went into white sugar a lot, so Permanar always refers to natu sakkarai and not white sugar. So we always use jaggery for it, and then you can consume it. So that's how actually the recipe goes. It is pretty good. It is pretty healthy. And it also helps in the spiritual process as well, especially during this time of COVID and all these coming up. It helps us to protect from all the bacteria by keeping our flow of the air path clear, so you can breathe with no stress. So we'll look into how we looked already into different kind of foods and how Vallalar Permanar was referring and recommended us to eat it. But now let's go ahead and see how Permanar was eating food. This was conveyed by one of his students to a society called as Brahmanyana Sabha. So in this society, his student actually, in his own words, was talking about Permanar and was giving up more details on how Permanar was consuming food. So the first thing what he said was his glimpse actually destroys desire to eat non-vegetarian food. So multiple people have noticed it, or anyone who actually have approached Perumal will give up the desire of eating non-vegetarian. He eats once every 2 to 3 days. He eats only once. Please don't try this at home, but this is his method after striving through, or after going through a lots of process. He had reached these stages. So things have to be gradual in here. And this is what his student was telling about his way of eating. And the next one was about the fasting. So he goes into fasting for 2 to 3 months. So basically 2 to 3 months of no food. And he drinks only hot water with sugar added in it. So this is during the later stages of him. So this comes after rigorous practices of different kind of foods, and there is a procedure for it. But this has to be taken. This actually gives us an idea of how the conversion in his body has happened, because he has transformed his body and he is not dependent on food at that point of time. So that is why things are like that. But it is not for everybody to try it at home and and to try all these practices. So that is why the food practices specified by Perumal are in 3 different stages. One for the regular people, the other for spiritual trying to seek spirituality, and the third one is for serious spiritual seekers. It is outlined in 3 different ways. That's the regimen that's advised. But what we have done is we have combined all the 3 into one. So now let's talk about Vallal Perumal as well, because all this knowledge, everything what we have acquired is because of him. Let's talk about his character traits as well, and how he thinks, and how he was proceeding in his life too. So Vallal Perumal Vallalar the name was not given. He didn't actually come up with this name. He didn't say, "Oh I'm Vallalar." So his name is Ramalingam. Our people were referring to as Ramalingam Adivgalar, and Vallal Perumal was called by his disciples, and he wasn't really excited about it either. He didn't entertain it either, because Vallal refers to God, and he always says like, Vallal yar engindra Ramalingam. So he was saying like, I'm also in search of God. So God is who I'm inquiring about, is what he was meaning to. A very simple and a humble person who used only 2 pairs of clothes, he lived in his friend's house a lot. He lived in his relative's home, did not seek to acquire lots of wealth for himself. When someone comes and falls in his feet, he literally cries, because they don't know the real truth of who the God is, and why that person is coming and falling in his feet. So he always advises them and preaches them the right path and how to proceed it. So he never advertises himself. He downplayed himself a lot in multiple occasions, in multiple cases. He never spoke high about himself. It's also said in spirituality, you do not want to speak high on yourself, but it would totally be opposite in the world, because in the world that shows your confidence, but in spirituality that will drain you, because there is lots of things to be learned, and what is being known as is very little. So that is why it is advised not to go in that route of being overconfident or confident on yourself in spirituality. Always go with something what you know, but there is always lots of things what we don't know, and we always try to figure out. So let's look at some of those character traits of him. This is one interesting case, or you might have heard of this too. There were 8 attempts taken to take a picture of him, and all the attempts completely failed, because light was passing through his body end to end. There was nothing to stop him. So there is no reflection basically for light. So since light wasn't reflected because there was nothing to stop, it passed through his body. So knowingly, there were multiple attempts of people trying to take pictures, and it didn't work. And multiple attempts were done unknowingly too, to see if the picture falls in the camera, and it didn't work either. Uh, I know lots of maybe cell phone companies will go bankruptcy these days if everybody's body becomes like this, and you can't take a selfie anymore. I would love that too, but that's the way. So let's say what also happened is one time. Since they can't take any pictures after a certain point of time because of the body getting converted to a light body, a transparent body, what someone did was they did a statue of him and they gave it to him. It was it was looking pretty good, but he actually broke the statue. He just put it down, saying like, "Oh, I converted my body, which was made of soil before, to a golden body, and now you have a mud statue for me." And also, the main reason why it was dropped and why he broke was to break the culture of worship, because people might get dragged into worshipping him rather than following the principles outlined in Suttha Sanmargam and the procedures to attain the Godhead. And we would make the practice, we will get diverted into a different methodology. So he wants us to focus more on the principles and the procedures of how to attain it, and rather than worshipping him. So some of the transformation traits can be shown in these characters. What happens is when people stand with Perumal in broad daylight in the afternoon, they would see their shadows, but Arutperumjothi shadow will never be there. And he says that is a sign of the body getting transformed to Sutta Degam. So the body transformation has already happened there. So that is one good sign. And also, when he walks, it never leaves a footprint. But at the same time, when anybody else walk with him, they would see the footprint too. So that is again another sign of transformation. Kalpataya is one of his students, and he was a great yogi. And one time, what he did was he was telling Perumal that through yoga he had attained great strength. His body is now like a rock, and he was like showing his muscles and how strong his muscles were. So what Vallalar Perumal did then was he took a stick actually and had that stick go through his body end to end. And he said, this is also a different kind of body with a transformation too. And to understand it clearly is when we have a lamp, and on the flame, if we put a stick, it lets the stick pass through completely in that light, right? And it goes other way without any hindrance. So that is how that stick went into his body, like end to end with nothing stopping. So he showed him to demonstrate that how body can get transformed in various stages. But like I said before, he always downplayed lots of these siddhis, because what he says about siddhis is we can achieve siddhis with 8 to 10 years of your struggle, with your hard work, but it is no use of it, because your main goal should be able to achieve something else and not getting one siddhi or one power. What are you going to do with one power with it if you are going to eventually die at some point of time? So he downplayed pretty much all siddhis, what he had achieved. And he also said that siddhis actually distract us it leads us in a different direction too. We get carried away with those power what we have obtained. Our ego gets kicked in. We try to proceed in a different route. So siddhis are not our goal for it. So this has been specified multiple times by him, because lots of time when people hear all the stuff what he's doing in word of mouth, they try to come and ask like, oh, how does this happen, and can I do this? Those are the things which people try to ask. And starts to he starts to preach about Suttha Sanmargam, and how it has to be practiced, and how to eventually achieve all those things. Because through its path, every siddhis, jnana siddhi, yoga siddhis, karma siddhis, all those things are on its path eventually, but that is not the ultimate goal. He preached not to indulge in religion or caste. Any kind of discrimination in caste is not entertained. He preached compassion towards all humans, not just humans, but all forms of life. That is why he did mention about the three main policies in Suttha Sanmargam practice. In one, which is not eating non-vegetarian or killing anything. The second is trying to console ourselves at any time when we are in anger or we have a desire. That is the second one up there. So these principles are what are set as the base for entering into Suttha Sanmargam. So after preaching all these things, on the end of January 1874, one day he called his disciples and said, I'm going to lock this room, and this time I'm not going to come back. And note that you will be pressured to open the room at some point of time, but I will not be revealed. The God is not going to reveal me. So saying this, he went into the room at 1874 and he merged with God. And this news got outside everywhere, and everybody started saying different things, and the government got involved, and eventually the collectors and all the government officials came in. They made them open the room which was locked by his disciples, and inside the room they didn't find anything except for his dress. So that is really what happened, and he merged with God. So want to bring this up because we have to know a little bit about what his thoughts was, because most of the time when we were talking about food, is thought about food is eating healthier and getting us to the spiritual path. So that is the angle which Permanar is always thinking, but we can use it for whatever we want. Uh, I think before Gandhi Anaya was mentioning that we can go some things in detail and stuff like that if someone needs more explanation on it, or if somebody needs like a full end session, maybe we can do a full quick preview end to end, like a fast session one time. That's also possible, but this is the last session. I think I mentioned it last time too. And what I can say is basically wish everybody success in this endeavor, and the change has to be gradual. That's one which we want to say, is the change has to be gradual, but it has to be really persistent, and it has to keep going, but it has to be gradual. With this, I end this session, and thank you everybody. So everybody for attending this, and we can go to the question and answer session. But in the last question and answer session, I want to bring this up, that there was a couple of questions which was directed to me, and I did not get a chance to answer. So I'll start with I did not even cover this one. So let me cover this one, and we'll go to the question and answer session. Oh, this is also an interesting one too. I'll say about this one. So what happened is, Perumal one time told one of his students to go ahead and to get a flagpole, like what you see in this snapshot. So this flagpole, he wants to hoist a flag. So the student wasn't 100% sure, like what kind of flagpole he was referring to. So the student was needing help and was showing some hesitation. Perumal said, "Oh, don't worry about it. You go ahead, and I'll be there." And those times, remember, there are no fast commutes, and they weren't using bikes, cars, and all those things. So they either have to take a bullock or they have to take a walk. So this student was hesitant when Perumal said, "Oh, you go, I'll join with you," and he started walking. So finally, they have to reach a city city where they can go to the shops and get this flagpole. So he reached the shop, he reached the city, and Perumal was already there in the shop. And he was a little bit surprised, but he said, "Okay, whatever it is, he's like, And then Perumal told him, like, "Okay, let's go ahead and get this particular flagpole. This is what we really want." And then he left the scene. And this student actually got the flagpole, came back, and was conveying this to his fellow students, right? And one student by the name Nyanananda Swamigal, this was marked in his diary, and he was like, did he come there? How did he even show up there? Because all day he was in satsang with us, and then how can he show up there and advise you to take what to choose? So this was one good incident to show about another kind of transformation in the body, what they call as pranavadegam, where there is possibilities of being in multiple places at the same time too.